My name is Casey Hersch. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, author, and founder of LightYourSparkle.life. Today I'm here with Dr. Josh Axe. He is a doctor of natural medicine and a clinical nutritionist with a passion to help people get healthy by using food as medicine. He founded one of the largest functional medicine clinics in the United States, and many of you know him as the founder of the popular health website, draxe.com, where you can find recipes, natural remedies, videos, nutrition advice, and fitness tips. His recent book is called Ancient Remedies, and one of my personal favorites is called Eat Dirt. Let's get started. So Dr. Axe, thanks for taking this time to meet with me. I just want to spend a moment to share with you why your work is so important to me and why this interview is also important to me. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker and healer, and my mission has been to help people connect the dots of their lives so that they can feel empowered over illness rather than at the mercy of it. And I lived, chronic childhood illness starting at age 1, and I was prescribed a lot of antibiotics until my 20s. I also grew up in a home with a lot of stress and trauma. And at age 30, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I'm alive today because I learned to embrace holistic and integrative health approaches. And looking back, I was introduced to one of your colleagues' work, The Maker's Diet by Jordan Rubin, and in my 20s. But I didn't have the confidence or the support to be able to follow his progressive recommendations. So, and I know you embrace the healing power of natural medicine. And had I implemented these philosophies earlier, I would have had more time to reverse the damage from my early years.
Agreed. Jordan is one of my best friends, and he's a co-founder of me with Ancient Nutrition. And he's just incredible. The Maker's Diet book, I think it's over 20 years old now. But that was a book even I read as well, really benefited from. And so it's, I'm glad to hear you're, on a mission as well, like we are, to help teach people how to use food as medicine and lifestyle as medicine. So excited for the interview today.
Yeah, thank you. So, you quote in your book, Eat Dirt, that the gut is not simply a food processing center. The gut is the center of health itself. And for people who are hearing this for the first time, can you explain the important relationship between our gut and whole body health?
Right. Well, we know Hippocrates said over 2,000 years ago, health or all disease begins in the gut. And we believe health begins in the gut as well. And the thing about your gut is, just starting off here, it's where your body is absorbing nutrients. I mean, that alone is so huge. So, we're eating different foods. We take vitamins and supplements, but we've heard the quote, you are what you eat, but truly you are what you digest. So if we're not digesting well and absorbing nutrients, you're not getting, people can be taking and getting vitamin C from an orange or a supplement, but if you're not absorbing that vitamin C, it's really not doing you much good. So that's why digestive health and having your digestive system healthy and functioning properly is so important, because number one, it's ground zero for where you're absorbing nutrients, everything from iron to vitamin C to zinc, magnesium, calcium, these critical minerals and vitamins and nutrients. The other thing that's really important to recognize about the digestive system is that it's also closely related to your immune system. In fact, researchers have quoted on several occasions that 70% of our immune system lives in our gut. And what that actually means is there's something that we refer to as our gut microbiome. And this is sort of a relationship between your gut lining and your the types of microbes that live in your gut, such as probiotics or bad bacteria. But really, that's where your immune system lives. And so keeping your gut healthy is probably the most critical thing you can do for immune health as well. And one other factor I think that's pretty surprising and incredible, 95% of serotonin, that good mood hormone, is actually released by your gut. So even our hormones and our happiness are related to our gut health. So anyways, gut health is critical. Everything from absorbing, vitamins and nutrients for whole body health, to our immune system, to our hormones, to our mood. So digestive health really is where our health begins.
Well, and this brings us to, we've got all these increases in autoimmune and allergy related illnesses, and the numbers are staggering. We're seeing the same astonishing increases in depression, autism spectrum disorders, Alzheimer's, other brain related disorders. And when you wrote Eat Dirt, which really influenced my life, we weren't in the midst of a pandemic, which has now, of course, made people more conscious of their immune systems. However, conventional approaches to disease include vaccines and pharmaceuticals, but don't address preventive methods to improve our immune systems and increase our resilience so that we're not at the mercy of diseases. What's your opinion about all of this?
Well, number one, it's important to recognize we don't have a predominant healthcare system in America. It's really a sick care system. And so, and I want people to think about this thought. If you want to go and learn how to be wealthy, you go and you study somebody who has studied poverty, or somebody who's studied wealth and is trained in wealth, like Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos or Ray Dalio, somebody who is in the wealth sector, an investor. And so, but that's the equivalent of, if you want to be healthy, if you listen to somebody who their entire career has only studied disease and has never studied or been trained in healthcare, that's an important thing to consider. So our entire medical system today, when you think about the doctors out there that are prominent in government and others, they've literally never in their entire lives studied how to actually increase someone's health. They've studied how to fight disease in a short-term process, but not actually how to help somebody heal medical conditions. And so they might learn how to change blood work or get certain markers. So if somebody has a thyroid hormone, they've learned how to prescribe a thyroid medication to bring it down. But again, they've never truly studied what is the root cause of this issue and how do we actually get the person healthy. So, one of the things we are seeing more in the past, especially 10 years, is more people are conscious that, hey, my health is my responsibility. And there are other practitioners outside of the conventional medical system that actually do practice healthcare, not sick or disease care. So I really think it's important that we recognize, hey, we need to start taking care of our health. And you really start by having that mentality of food being our medicine, shopping and buying more organic foods and products. That's one reason I love Costco, is they have such a wide, a wide array of organic fruits, organic vegetables, organic meat products, things like wild caught salmon and those sort of products. And that's really the step number one to getting healthy, is getting more of these foods, especially getting them at the most cost-effective price this Costco has. And so really, I think it starts there. I think, of course, exercise and movement's important, just getting outdoors and good relationships and emotions. But I really think that a lot of it starts, our health, for the most part, starts with the food we're eating. And, Ann Wigmore is famous for saying, food could be your greatest poison or your greatest medicine. And you have the power to choose poison or medicine every single day.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, for sure. Now, I'm sure you see a lot of people with food sensitivities, and they're often afraid to try new foods because it's sort of ingrained in them to focus on what not to eat rather than how to eat in order to rid themselves of their reactions. Now, a lot of your suggestions you focus on abundance of ways to heal the gut, which include food choices. How do you encourage people with food sensitivities to try something, say, like goat milk kefir, when they have a negative emotional charge toward dairy? And how do you help them when they're highly sensitive to shift toward healing the gut and ridding themselves of the fear that they might just make their fragile condition worse?
I think vegetables, for the most part as well, if they're cooked, and according to Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, they're probably the foods that are easiest on the body. They're the most nutritious. They're the ones you have the least chance of having a reaction to. So cooked vegetables and doing a very wide array of them is number one, the best place to start. After that, doing some fruits, not dried fruits, but more wild organic fruits are a good option to jump into next. And then organic meat products, everything from chicken and beef and wild caught fish like salmon to grouper and halibut and snapper and tuna and all of these different types of wild caught fish, lamb and venison. And so those are the first things I would say is enter into those waters first. And really, I've worked with thousands of people over the years and helping hundreds and hundreds of people reverse everything from autoimmune disease to type 2 diabetes to hypothyroidism. And the diet that is the most effective is when somebody consumes a diet that's primarily made up of meat and vegetables. Okay, so 50% of the day is vegetables, and maybe some berries. Really the most on after that in terms of a grain, rice. Rice, especially if it's made into congee or cooked a long time, is the food that's the easiest on the body and that's for the digestive system. But then adding in things like oats and quinoa are a good option as well. And then after those things, and once somebody's tolerating all of those well, I would say then entering the waters of things like dairy products and trying everything from goat cheese to sheep's milk yogurt to water buffalo or buffalo mozzarella, those sort of products. But, and the reason for that is when we're talking about dairy products, cow's milk, our cattle today have been bred genetically to not have the healthiest milk. In fact, cow milk today in America has very high levels of what's called A1 casein. And this casein, this type of milk protein, tends to be by far the most allergenic protein found in milk today versus goat milk and sheep milk actually only have A2 types of casein, which is a protein. So it tends to be much more tolerable and easier to digest, especially if it's fermented in the form of a yogurt or a kefir. And so for that reason, goat's milk and sheep milk's products tend to be easier to digest and better and healthier for most people. So people could try that. And I recommend doing that really only in small amounts, not going overboard on dairy. I mean, some people, that tolerate dairy very well. Some people don't very well. For myself, I still don't do very well with dairy. If I do a little bit of goat cheese, my body does fine. If I do too much even of a healthy goat's milk product, I have a hard time versus my business partner we mentioned earlier, Jordan Rubin. He can eat very large amounts of goat's milk and sheep milk's products, and even cow milk can do just fine. So I think that's another thing to recognize is that everyone is a unique individual. It's really important to listen to your body. If your body has a reaction, doesn't do well with something, then, stay off that food for a period of time, incorporate other foods, listen to your body to see what your body is tolerating and doing well with.
And you talked about, I lost you for just a brief second there. The audio wasn't so good. And you were talking about rice. So you're not opposed to people having like organic brown rice, organic white rice in terms of grains is kind of what I was hearing you say, just making sure that it's locally sourced and that it's more important that it's clean, not so much that it's a grain.
Well, I think a few things about grains to consider. Obviously, we've gone through some popular diets that eliminate grains, such as the paleo diet and the keto diet, and even low carb diets. But grains, if they're consumed in small amounts on occasion, they're fine for a number of people. And some people tolerate them well, some people don't. But the grain that is the easiest to digest for almost everybody, and by the way, it's the number one grain consumed in Asia. When you look at the island of Okinawa in areas of Japan, I mean, they consume a large amount of grain and they have the longest lifespan in the world, and they consume a lot of rice. But here's the key is, how is the rice or how is the grain prepared? So grains are meant to be sprouted and or fermented and then cooked for a long period of time. The problem we run into today is most grain has not been sprouted or it hasn't been cooked long enough. And so it's high in something called phytic acid or enzyme inhibitors, which basically means they're difficult to digest. Versus rice, if you buy sprouted rice in a whole grain rice like a jasmine rice or a brown rice or a basmati rice, so the white rices are fine as long as they are not the processed rice. But you can buy jasmine or basmati rice and buy it sprouted and then cook it in a slow cooker or crock pot for overnight. And it becomes a mush, which Chinese medicine calls it kanji. But kanji is one of the most healing, recipes consumed and typically for immune health and for gut health that's been around for a really long period of time. So anyways, all that being said, I'm fine with grains in, a dose, especially in the morning or afternoon. Now, having a lot of carbs in the evening is never healthy for anybody. But if you want to have some sprouted grains around lunch and you tolerate them well, then you should eat them. Now, I will say people with autoimmune disease or inflammatory bowel disease oftentimes will not tolerate grains or nuts or seeds or beans very well. But the one grain that most people with inflammatory bowel disease will do okay with is that rice kanji that's sprouted, that's cooked for a long period of time. But even then, again, the ideal healing diet for autoimmune disease, going back to this, is cooked vegetables and meat. Really, those two things, if somebody's looking to totally reverse disease, if that makes up the bulk of their diet, it's probably the greatest, gives them the greatest chance of complete healing.
Thanks, Dr. X. Yeah, that's really helpful. You speak a lot about over sanitization, and many of us with autoimmune conditions, we have this fear instilled in us as well, that we're vulnerable. We need to avoid germs. I mean, I had a clinician tell me once that I needed to wash my hands every time I pet my indoor cats so that I don't get any parasites and affect my already fragile gut. With COVID, we've got, people washing and spraying down their packages before they bring them inside the home. Can you talk about how to find a balance so that we can improve our gut health and immunity, but still feel emotionally safe from germs?
Yeah, so here's what I would say. Number one, and just remember, it is such a fine balance. And one, we are absolutely hurting ourselves with over sanitization. Now, listen, we need sanitization. Sanitization is what has really helped eliminate, so many acute illnesses today. So again, the fact that we have great sanitation today is keeping us from dying of a lot of different types of infections. At the same time, it is absolutely hurting our immune system if we over sanitize. And here's the thing, there is not a single hand sanitizer out there found in a conventional store typically that isn't damaging our bodies for the most part. Now, what the ancients did is they would use things like essential oils and even alcohol-based products, things that are more natural, and those work fine, and they're not going to kill off a lot of the good microbes in our body. For instance, lavender essential oil has all of these great antimicrobial properties. Tea tree oil, also known as melaleuca, has all of these antimicrobial properties. So going back and using things that doesn't completely wipe out all the good bacteria, that's important. I think there's a difference too between using something, once a day and using it constantly all day long. But absolutely, and I would say too, there are many studies showing that the overuse of antibiotics, whether it be as a medication or hand sanitizers, increases our risk of infections in the future. And listen, bacteria is not all bad. Bacteria is good. Part of the way we strengthen our immune system over time is actually by being exposed to germs. For instance, I have a 1-year-old daughter. Her name is Arwen, and she's, Chelsea and I, she's just the love of our lives. And there's not a single thing she doesn't put in her mouth. All day, every day, dirt, rock, and it's innate. It's this natural thing that God has wired in her body to do. Because how else would that happen? It is an innate God-given thing to where she is walking around putting everything you can imagine into her mouth. And we know through science that builds her immune system. It's micro exposures. We need exposure to microbes because they're many inoculations. They help immunize ourselves to different exposures. It's the same thing with raw honey, by the way. Why do we hear that you should consume raw local honey for allergies? The reason is there are over 200 microbes in forms of pollen in raw local honey. And so when you consume raw local honey day after day throughout the year, then you have a big pollen exposure. So you're getting micro doses of pollen. And then when that time of year comes in the spring or fall during allergy season and there's a large dose of pollen, oh, your body's immune to it. A lot of times people think, oh, I need to take honey once I have my allergies. People don't understand this. No, if you want to fight allergies and not get them in the fall and spring, you should be doing things like bee pollen and raw local honey from your local farmer's market, consuming some every single day, just a little bit, and that will build up your immune system. So anyways, again, I'm all for sanitation, but sanitation should be done with things like lavender oil. It should be done with natural. And listen, there are some fantastic brands that have natural hand sanitizers that Chelsea and I use when we travel and we use on a regular basis. If you're in a place that's actually dirty, but really, rather than focusing on preventing disease, we should be focusing on building health even more so.
Yeah. You mentioned, Dr. Axe, seasonal allergies. So does the same thing apply that if someone has really strong seasonal allergies, taking a small walk outside and getting micro doses of the pollen in the air can actually help improve their health versus feeling like they need to stay indoors all the time because they've got the pollen allergies?
Well, it depends on the type of year. So if you are in the middle of a terrible allergy attack and there's loads of pollen in the air, you're not doing yourself any favors by going outdoors at that time period, because you don't have your immunity built up and you don't have that tolerance built up. So no, in that case, I would stay more indoors with an air filter. And so that's the big thing, is get an air purifier to purify your air at that time. But when it's not in the midst of allergy season, yes, the more you're outdoors exposing yourself to, everything that's in nature, yes, that's what you want to be doing. So outside of those 2 weeks in the spring and fall that tend to be allergy season, yes, the more we get outdoors and the more we are eating things like raw local honey and eating local vegetables, the greater chance we're going to have and the ability to fight off, excess pollen and excess microbes that can cause us to have those types of reactions.
Right. Now, everybody can relate at some point or another to having brain fog, and we all want to think clearer. How is our gut health and diet related to the way our brain functions?
Oh, goodness. Well, there are many connections in our body, and this was known widely in things like ancient Asian medicine and Ayurveda and in Middle Eastern medicine. They knew that different organ systems were connected. And unfortunately, a lot of our conventional medical system today is kind of separated, where they say, oh, you have a thyroid problem? That's just your thyroid. Or you have a brain problem, it's just your brain. The ancients knew, well, you have a thyroid problem, that's related to actually your adrenals and your gut health. Or, hey, you've got a skin issue, your skin issues are related to either your liver or your colon. And the same goes for your brain. We know there is a deep, deep connection between our gut and our brain. In fact, there's a condition called leaky gut syndrome. In the medical literature, it's known as intestinal permeability. But leaky gut is when your gut lining acts like a net or a barrier between your gut and your bloodstream. What can happen is you can get tears in this net, and things that should never get into your bloodstream get in there. For instance, undigested food particles like gluten or casein, bad bacteria, heavy metals. Those things can get into your bloodstream. They circulate in your bloodstream and then go up and affect your brain, and can cause brain fog, can cause depression, can cause anxiety, and a number of other disorders. And so that being said, keeping your gut healthy is critical. And there's certain things that are needed. Number one thing that's needed is collagen. Your gut, 70% of your gut, it's made of collagen. And so if you're not getting collagen in your diet via consuming bone broth or taking a multi-collagen protein supplement or something like that, but we should be getting lots of collagen. Because think about this, if somebody's trying to put on muscle, they need to be getting muscle building proteins in their diet, right? So they're aware of that. Well, if you're trying to build your gut health, you have to have collagen because it's what that's actually made up of. So all that being said, collagen's number one. Number two is getting herbs that support your gut health, like ginger. Ginger is a fantastic herb. You can buy the dried herb, you can buy the supplement, you can buy the tea, but ginger is very, very good for our gut health, as is peppermint, as is licorice root, so there are a lot of different herbs and things like that that are good for gut health. And then in addition, probiotics. In fact, if there are two supplements people should take to support their gut health, it would be collagen and probiotics. Those are going to have the biggest impact on our gut health, which then will affect our brain health. There are other great things for brain health that are also connected to your gut. Lion's mane mushroom is one of those. It's very good for your gut-brain connection. Ginkgo biloba is good. You know, that's another one. But I would say for the most part, you want to take care of your gut and your brain. Collagen, lion's mane mushroom, and probiotics. Those are the three I would consider using. And then eliminating those foods that cause gut inflammation, the refined food products, the fast foods, refined grains, sugar, hydrogenated oils. Those are all going to be hard on gut health. Conventional dairy, very hard on the gut. And so if you can eat a diet that's primarily cooked vegetables and meat and some fruit and grains like rice, you're going to have, that's going to help your gut and your brain.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Axe. And, you mentioned like when we go to the farmer's market or, a co-op or wherever we're getting our organic produce, that you should find the food that has the most dirt on it. Now, a lot of us come home and we still wash our organic produce because there's a lot of conversation around chemtrails. And if you live in an agricultural community, then, okay, is there still the spraying that's still affecting the organic produce? I'm just curious, should we be washing our organic produce and all that dirt's going off of them?
Right. Well, yeah, I think we should wash it, but I think what you wash it with is water and apple cider vinegar. I mean, something like that is going to kind of, cleanse it to the point it needs to be cleansed. And the SBO probiotics aren't they're going to be more of those probiotics that are embedded in the carrot. So as long as you're not scrubbing it or using a chemical, you're still going to be getting those. Again, washing it with water or water and vinegar or water and lemon juice, that's absolutely fine. And that's probably what we should be using.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of patients who have been on lots of antibiotics in their early years, there's some research that says it can permanently, reprogram the immune system. They go to physicians who tell them when they have these mysterious symptoms that they're incurable. What do you say to your patients and people to give them hope?
Well, one, I know this because I've taken care of thousands and thousands of patients over the years. And that is that the body has an amazing capacity to heal. I think what a lot of people don't do, here's the thing I'll say, two things happen. One, I think we don't realize how much, so hear me out on this. One, when doctors say it's all in your mind, they're not right in the way that they're saying that, because it's not in their mind. Somebody actually has that health issue, 100%. But the mind is playing a role in 80+% of the health problems out there, or even 100%. Here's what I mean. We know that different emotions we experience and types of stress affect our health. And I think with those people that have those major health issues, if somebody has radically changed their diet to the right type of diet for them, and they're still having problems, typically there's typically an issue there. There's typically an emotional root and a food root. And so let me kind of explain how this works. And so if somebody has a digestive issue, let's call it, let's say inflammatory bowel disease, or let's say autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease, number one, that person on that diet should be consuming a diet primarily of cooked vegetables and cooked wild organic meat, and maybe a little bit of things like blueberries, pears, a little bit of rice congee. If somebody's eating that diet and that's all they're eating, wow, on the food side, their body's going to heal. Versus if they're eating a lot of raw vegetables and vegetable juices, that is not a good diet for somebody with autoimmune disease. It can be a good diet for somebody with a toxicity issue, but not for that issue. And that's an important thing to remember. There is no one perfect diet for everybody. Some people do great on a keto diet. Not everybody does. Some people can do good on paleo. Some people can do good on a pescatarian. Not everybody. So that's an important thing to remember. But one, if you're eating the right diet and you're still having problems, you gotta go to the emotional root. And here's what's known. Think about this. In Chinese medicine, there were 5 main categories of emotions that cause diseases in certain organ systems. The emotion of fear, for instance. Let me ask you this. What organ system, or name one that you think is affected by fear? If somebody's in a fight or flight mode or has fear.
Definitely the stomach.
Yeah, so the stomach can be affected. One other I'm going to throw out there, though, is your adrenals,
Yeah,
right? If you're in a fight or flight state, your adrenal glands start pumping out adrenaline, right? Adrenals, adrenaline, and other stress hormones like cortisol. So we know for a fact that if you experience fear, it affects the adrenal glands. It makes that organ system sick if you have too much fear. So think about this. Now, I'm going to talk about the stomach now, and not the stomach's not affected by fear, but it's more worry. Okay. If somebody worries, which is related to fear, but that emotion of worry, people will say, oh, I feel like my stomach is tied in knots, or they'll get an upset stomach if they over worry or overthink about something. So we know that worry affects the stomach or the upper GI, including the pancreas. If somebody has the emotion of anger, frustration, resentment, that affects the liver and the gallbladder, okay, that organ system. Why do we call someone an angry drunk, or that actually affects them in that way? So there's another prime example. Another example of this would be anxiety. If somebody has a lot of anxiety or nervousness, what happens? Their heart rate actually goes up. So we know that anxiety and nervousness actually affects your heart, affects your blood vessels, affects your blood pressure, and the emotion of grief, depression. Okay. Grief is something has happened to you in the past and it's still affecting you emotionally today. You haven't let go of it. It could be unforgiveness. Maybe there was physical abuse, emotional abuse, some sort of trauma, and you're still living with it emotionally today and you have not moved on past that. That's grief. And that essentially affects depression, where something has happened in the past and you're living with today. That affects the organ systems of your immune system, which is your colon and your lungs. So if somebody has autoimmune disease and they want to completely heal from autoimmune disease, they need to follow the diet that's best for autoimmune disease. And by the way, I cover all this in my book, Ancient Remedies. I have a new book and I get into it. But that being said, you got to deal with that. You got to follow the right diet for that. You need to address that emotional root. Here's another thing that happens with autoimmune disease. Think about what happens here. The body is attacking itself. That's what happens with autoimmune disease. People with autoimmune disease also tend to attack themselves. They're hard on themselves. Like they have negative self-talk. We've been around people, right? A lot of times it's like, they'll think, I'm not good enough. I messed up. Like they literally are emotionally attacking themselves. That plays out, that exact same thing plays out in our physical bodies. And we know that I just went through the whole thing. Your emotions are deeply connected to our organ systems, and medical research has proven this. Over 80% of doctors' visits are related to stress, these different emotional stressors. The only thing I did there was break down for thousands of years what's known in ancient Asian medicine, which, by the way, Japan probably practices more of this today than any nation, and they have the best health in the world of actually understanding how these emotions deeply impact our health.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. And I love, Dr. Axe, that on your website, in your books, and all the work that you do, you really do stress that integration, that it's physical, it's emotional, it's getting outside and being out, in nature. There's so many different dimensions to healing. And it's not just change my diet, change my life. It's a big start. But for some of us, there are these other elements that are also really crucial to weave in. And once you start looking at it from this bigger picture that you just so excellently walked us through, we start to see that there are so many different ways to intervene in our health and really take action and feel empowered over it.
Yeah, agreed.
So, wow. Okay. Well, we covered a lot. I could ask you so many more questions, but I know your time is limited. So if there's anything else that you want to add that might be important for people to understand about these connections between the gut and overall health that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I'll say, really the keys to being healthy, it's taking care of your emotional health. So if you know you're having any of those negative emotions I've talked about, start fostering the opposite emotion. If you're always thinking about the past and depressed about something that didn't happen, let go of that. Practice forgiveness, and then start focusing on hope and faith in the future. Really start thinking in those terms. of building and fostering those healthy emotions. Again, look at the diet and realize, listen, don't stop following the fads of paleo, keto, vegan, this, that. Look at your body. What are you dealing with? And start following the diet that is best for you and for your body. And you can work with a functional medicine practitioner. You can read online. I've written thousands of articles. I wrote a book called Ancient Remedies, where I go through what diets are best for what people based on the condition you're experiencing. So you can get that and find out. There's a quiz in there, so you find out which diet is best for you in that Ancient Remedies book. But I would do that. So I'd follow the right diet for yourself. I would focus on fostering those healthy emotions, which I actually also cover in that book. And I think really, if you do those two things, you're going to be off to the races. The next big thing is get outdoors, exercise. You don't need to do hours, but just move on a regular basis and spend as much time outside in nature as you possibly can. And building community relationships are critical to health. Hugging your friends. We know one of the other issues we've had today is people have not been connecting as much as they should. Like there are studies showing that hugging somebody releases something called a hormone called oxytocin, which is one of the most healing hormones on the planet that helps balance out your entire body, actually helps fill your body with love and hope and joy. So anyways, I think building community, having deep, meaningful relationships is another important part of being healthy. And so I would say, again, I get the new book, Ancient Remedies, follow the diet in there and some of those, the advice, foster good community and healthy emotions. And I think people are going to see great changes in their health. And I also think, again, as we're talking about Costco, really focus on buying organic meat, fruits, and vegetables, getting a lot more of those in our diet. And from a dietary standpoint, also critical to being healthy.
Yeah. And you also talked about at the beginning that there are the conventional medical model may not be on board with all of this, but there are many, many, many clinicians, complementary and alternative healers. The list is very broad, functional medicine physicians that are there to give people the support and help them implement these things if they're needing that extra help, really.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Dr. Axe. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate what you do in helping, and helping get the word about health out there as well. So thanks again.